This happened to me a few years ago. When I was driving on the road in my car, I ran out of gas and stayed in a deserted place. I couldn't guess where I was because I didn't have map knowledge. I suddenly thought of hitchhiking. Although it was a little scary, I gathered my courage and decided to hitchhike. At noon, the sun was hitting right overhead and it was scorching hot. I had a headache and my clothes were soaked in sweat. My tired arm hung down and down, as did my hope of making a journey. But a red pickup truck appeared in the distance. "Please stop. Please stop," I repeated, sticking my thumb out away. As the truck got closer, I waved my arms until it finally slowed down and stopped. "Is your car there?" he asked the person at the wheel. "Yes, sir," I said. "I'm out of gas." He said, "Jump. Some gas for you at the next stop. We will bring it," said. Cappy was such a nice guy. He definitely liked to talk about his family, and he told funny stories. It had been a long conversation, and my fear had passed a little. After a while, I began to wonder when this town would appear, and expressed my concern that it might be too far away. It didn't seem to bother Cappy. I suppose he had nothing better to do, and still I have never been able to find out where he went. The road was bumpy, then turned into two brown lanes with grass in the middle. At last, I could see a town looking out over wild fields. A poor but strange, diverse little town. There were pale blue houses with white decorations, a few brick and mortar works with handmade signs, the town square, a large red barn. Cars were parked here and there, some without tires, but I didn't see any people around. It was not surprising for such a remote hamlet, but what surprised me was that, despite the barn, I did not see any animals. There was no official fuel station, but we found an old garage in front of a petrol pump. Cappy apologized for lending the gas can to a neighbor while searching the decrepit garage. "I'd better find someone who's leaving," I said. "Tell them what we're doing, so they don't think we're robbing the place." Said, "Really, I just wanted to get rid of that smell." We had to find a gas canister, and we started looking. There were several children sitting at a small picnic table and playing with something that looked like a cake. I took it for granted that there was a birthday party decked out of cake, masks, and the occasional party. Trying not to look as threatening as possible, I walked around on it and tried to question it. The town seemed deserted, but I could hear sounds echoing from somewhere, so I followed them. Two children appeared, chasing each other through the tall grass. Deck. There was an apple orchard in the distance, running to and fro, tossing apples to each other, some of them on all fours. As I approached, laughter and shouts of fun came from all sides. It seemed like normal child behavior, but then I noticed that they were all wearing dog masks. "I'm sure someone baked that cake to see if I should bake it," I said, trying to sound like a competent parent. The children stopped what they were doing and looked at me. All of a sudden, I started shaking. They all wear dog masks, but the fact that these masks are not cute masks scared me even more. I finally got a glass of water and felt a little relieved, but I asked them where your mom or dad were, and then I'm sorry, but good guys, can you take off these masks for a minute? I said. The children looked at each other, then turned to me. I'm starting to feel embarrassed. And whose birthday is it? I said. One of the children made a slightly predatory noise. Oh, is that you? Another child imitated the other. Is it you then? Is it your birthday? They asked each other and kept pretending to be a dog. Very well then. But when I find their parents, they'll hear all about it, as if they didn't even know what I was saying. I turned to leave, but all the children who were joking were now standing next to each other, blocking my way. Instead of telling them to move, I walked to the left to get around them. But while I was going in one direction, they went too. And when I went the other way, they went too. I said, "Stop it." I didn't want to push them. They were just kids. However, their masks looked very different and realistic. The two masks did not look alike, each a different breed of dog. The expressions ranged from docile to angry. When I started counting 3, several children began to make faint, low grunting noises. I kept counting down 2, and more children joined in the bad growls. I took a heavy breath, knowing they wouldn't move. All right then. 1. All at once, the children began to bark loudly. I was afraid of how wild and angry they were. "Stop it," I ordered, but they only barked louder. One of them threw a rotten apple at me, and that apple hurt. This time, they kept throwing things at me, at the other kids. "Wait until you find your family," I started screaming, but before I finished, I got an apple in my face. While I was distracted, a few kids pushed me, and I lost my balance. They all ran at me, kicking and scratching. "What's the matter with you, children?" I shouted, pushing them to the ground one by one. But they kept fading away, kept kicking and scratching and making disturbing noises. The howling, like a dog, and the violent loud noise gave me a headache. I started shooting children. I didn't care about their safety or what their parents were going to do. Getting rid of them. Then I ran away to find Cappy. The kids chased me all the way into town. They were just children, but they had eerie images. I saw Cappy's truck, but I didn't see him. The boys grabbed me and threw me to the ground. Again, I was surrounded by those weird and scary brats. I tried to get up, but there were too many children on me, and my cries for help did not bring any help. "Take off the fucking masks," I shouted, trying to pull one out who was tightly tied. The barking turned to laughter, and I was afraid that other adults might be watching. My anger had subsided a little when the boys suddenly stopped attacking. They all turned their heads in the same direction and were shouting for joy as they ran away together. "Team." "Cappy," I exclaimed, looking around. My voice echoed for miles. The children were out of sight, so I ran towards the truck to search the garage, which was still decked out. I stopped at the store first to see if anyone could help us, but there was no one inside, and the shelves inside were usually empty and bare with dust. And then I heard a commotion outside. I looked out of the window, but didn't see anyone, so I opened the door a little and turned my ear. I was sure there was something going on with these kids. The only noise in the whole town was coming from that direction. Part of me was saying I should go back to the garage, but I wanted to see if the kids were being reprimanded for their behavior. I followed the echoes until I heard a muffled, mournful scream. When I reached the house where I heard the sound, I shouted to see if anyone was at home and clicked on the door, but I didn't get any answer. Then the sounds of commotion started coming again, and I followed the sound. The commotion was coming from a farmhouse at the bottom of a hill close to it. I ran so fast that when I came home, although I hesitated, I almost fell on my heels. The door was completely open, and there were dog masks on the floor. I needed to know what was going on, but I wasn't ready to find out. I thought about shouting for help again, or for Cappy, but still I couldn't make a sound. I had to go in. Footsteps creaked the boards, but it wouldn't relieve the tension. When the screams subsided a little, I slid up the porch steps and looked inside, but didn't see anyone inside. The masks were on the floor. I knew. A piece of mask brought me closer to the disgusting sounds and led me to an open door that led down from the dilapidated house to the basement. Listening closely, I tried to determine what was going on. It was definitely these children. There were sounds of growling, barking, whining, drooling. I didn't want to go there, but I had to see it with my own eyes. A single light bulb lit up most of the room, but couldn't quite reach the stairs, so I knew I'd be hiding in the dark. I saw the children, and most of them were gathered in the center under the light. It looks like they were eating something. It was a meat they were eating, and while they were eating, blood was flowing in their mouths. It was impossible for me to describe their faces, because they were very bad and disgusting, at the same time deformed. Well, I thought, what kind of meat is this? But the next thing I know, it was Cappy they were eating, and I was so scared, I was thinking about what to do. I covered my mouth and tried hard not to scream. I wanted to get out of there, but I was praying that they wouldn't hear me. I left that house and made my way to the store, and immediately thought I could protect myself by setting up a barricade. It was night, and I could hear the children moaning in the distance. I thought they were looking for me. I suddenly thought of Cappy when I was trying to help me. The poor man was eaten by those terrible creatures. Right now, I wanted to find gas more than before because I wanted to burn down this damn town. The sounds of howling and moaning of the children had passed, so I sneaked out the back door and crawled into the forest, planning to go out on a main road after sunrise. All of a sudden, a silhouette was approaching, barely visible, and I could hear the rustling of weeds. It was one of those savages. I hesitated because I was afraid that they would hear me and warn the others. There were several pounds of heavy rock near my feet, so I picked one up and held it tight. I saw the boy grabbing an animal that was leaping through the grass. It hurt and disgusted me as I gnawed at the poor creature. He was growling while eating. I held my breath as he slowly lifted his head, and I hit that boy's head repeatedly. I never thought I could do this to a child, but I wouldn't do it for my safety, and I wanted to get revenge on Cappy in a small way. The sun began to rise, and I observed the child's body. He had a different body, big teeth, big eyes, face shape, and it was at a very creepy level. Then the sounds of laughter started to be heard from the town, and I started running quickly in the opposite direction without looking back. Then I went to a main road and rested my somewhat tired body. I still had their growling sounds in my mind and freak images in front of my eyes. I still don't understand who they were, why they were doing such behavior, and I haven't even passed within 100 km of that town since that day.